Hello and welcome to Business Connections, a program put on by the Dayton Area Chamber of Commerce. My name is Holly Allen. I'm Director of Marketing and Communications for the Dayton Area Chamber. Thanks for being with us. According to the Small Business Administration, more than 50% of all small business owners are ages 50 and older. And there are 28 million businesses, small businesses in America, meaning millions and millions of small business owners or leaders are now thinking about an exit strategy. What are they going to do when it's time to leave the business? And that's our topic for today. And I want to welcome Jack Lohbeck. He is from Aileron. He's here to talk about creating that strategy, otherwise known as business succession planning. Jack, thank you for being with me today.
Thank you very much, Holly.
I appreciate your time. This is a big topic for business owners. It's something, as we were talking before the show here, that maybe in most cases they don't want to talk about, but it's really important as you start thinking about what's going to happen to that business on your way out. Let's start with Aileron, so people get an idea of what you do. What services does Aileron offer, and maybe specifically in this realm as well?
Well, Aileron is a center for professional education for entrepreneurs. We work with private businesses across the country, and we work with them to develop their full potential. And as succession or business transition comes into this, it really is in the scope of the planning. We begin work with almost every client with the idea of what's your personal vision? What do you want to do? Because really, as the business owner, at that point, that's what's the most important. Once you develop a personal vision, then you can move into a company vision, corporate vision, if you will, then your mission statement and values. And we find that a lot of business owners are so into the weeds, if you will, of running their business. They really don't work on their business. And our main focus is to help them elevate out of the weeds, to look down and to run their business, to operate their business for the long haul.
It's not easy to do.
No, it isn't. And especially when you have a lot of successful business owners that have had relatively no education or background in the operation of the business, but they know their craft, their trade, the particular business that they are operating in.
Right.
The idea of planning, the clients that I work with, I kind of set the stage and say, we want to develop a culture of planning. In other words, that whether it be the budgeting process, or whether it be the sales strategy or planning, or the long-term plan for the business, that always includes transition. We have a saying, every business will transition one way or the other.
Right.
And they do. And it's been my experience and the experience of all the other business advisors that when you plan a transition of a business, it goes much smoother than if you don't. So somebody says, when do you start?
Yeah.
Well, you almost start the day you begin in your business. Now, reality, we know that that's not going to happen, but we believe that the longer the runway is for planning for that transition, the likelihood that it will be more successful goes up dramatically.
Right, which makes sense. We find that in pretty much everything in life. The more you plan, the better prepared you are, the better it will go.
And so the key question is, when do you start? Okay, we can say day one that you own the business, or let's at least do it several years. If I have a client that says, I want to exit my business, and I said, what are you thinking about?
Right.
Well, I'm thinking 6 months. I go, oh, that's not good.
Yeah.
Quite honestly, I like the 3 to 5 year window.
Okay.
And so what are some of the things that they ought to be doing to lead up into a successful transition? One of the things I encourage my clients to do is to value their business every year. Now, it doesn't mean that they have to go outside and pay for a business valuation, but I believe that they ought to develop a formula or a metric, and there's lots of different ways to value business out there. But find one, understand that metric, the calculations, and do it every year.
Right. And
take a look at it. And
now, does it help to have someone from the outside looking in? I've heard that, you know, when you're in the business, you're emotionally attached to it. It's kind of hard to take a look at it that isn't biased.
You're exactly right. One of the, in addition to developing a culture of planning, and we do strategic planning with almost all of our clients, and we really believe heavily in that process. We also have, we also really push the idea of outside boards.
Okay.
Clay Mathiel, our founder, made a statement that if he had a popcorn stand at the corner of 3rd and Main, he would have an outside board of advisors, because he knows that he'd be battling which corner do I put it on.
Right.
And so we do promote the whole idea of outside advisors.
Okay.
Different from necessarily a board of directors, but board of advisors. And we look at these advisors as competent business people, people that are there for the right intention to serve the business owner, and that are willing to say, wait a minute, you need to start doing this.
Right.
You need to start planning this.
Yeah, you need someone who's able to stand up and question things and not just say yes to everything
Exactly.
the owner wants to do.
We like to see people that, you know, on advisory boards that are competent, that, and certainly the compensation for these advisory boards, you know, are not, it's not necessarily, minimal. It's minimal. It's a stipend, okay?
Right.
We want people that will speak their mind based upon their experience, and be that voice to the business owner that says, hey, wait a minute, you really need to be thinking about this. There's a number of ways that businesses can transition. You can transition with a family transfer. It can be a management buyout. It can be a sale to a third party. It can be an ESOP, an employee stock ownership plan. It can be an IPO, which is very rare these days, which is an initial public offering. Or you can liquidate. Those are the ways that you can transition out of the business. Those are your options. And at some point, maybe all of them are on the table. You know, there's a particularly sticky issue when you get into family transfers.
Right. Families are always sticky.
Families are, right. And you know, it's sad to say, but I've seen companies where family holidays have been ruined.
I'm sure.
By what happens here.
Yeah.
Now
Unhappy Thanksgivings.
Yes, yeah. We are very fortunate in this area. We have an organization in Cincinnati called the Gehring Center. It's affiliated with the University of Cincinnati Business School, and they focus totally on family businesses and all the little peculiarities that go with the family business. And so, you know, and there are no two transitions of businesses that are alike.
I'm sure. A lot of different pieces that go into it.
And then when you get into family businesses, that there are more than one child, there's more than one child that would like to be in the business, or maybe one wants to be in the business, the others don't want to be in the business. How do you how do you develop fairness, and what is being fair? Right. So those are all issues that need to be addressed.
Do you find it's better for the business owner to go to a third party? And would you say in pretty much every case that's the best way to start versus trying to tackle something like this yourself? As you said, in most situations there are probably some sticky points that maybe it would be better to have someone from the outside come in and help.
Well, the other thing is, I think every business needs to have good, solid advisors, separate from a board of advisors or advisory board. They need good legal counsel. they need to have a good accountant.
Okay.
And I would say that by the time people are starting to get traction in their business and develop wealth inside the business, they need to be working with a financial planner.
Okay. So you want to get that team of people together.
Business transition is a team event.
Okay. It's not an individual sport.
It is not. It is not. And if I find a business person that's been working with a competent attorney, a competent accountant for a long time, generally speaking, this is a subject that will be discussed from them. And because once what you're going to do is determined, it becomes a tax planning event at that point in time. How are we going to do this tax efficiently?
Okay.
And so that's why all members of that team are important to have working with you.
What sorts of factors do you need to worry about, which is why probably you want so much time to plan? I'm assuming you want to make sure that the business's finances are taken care of and in a good place.
Perfect, yep.
You want to make sure that the business is on sound footing as far as...
Got a great management team in place.
Right.
Every bench strength is good.
Right,
Yep.
right. What other aspects come into play? I'm sure there are so many we couldn't even name them here. But
Well, I would say the first part is the owner coming to grips with the fact that, hey, I will be exiting this business at some point in time.
Okay, there's an emotional section.
Exactly. Some business owners deal with that very well. They have something that they do on the side.
They want to go play golf.
They want to go play golf, or they want to travel, or whatever.
Right, right.
Some people they love their business, and it's hard to separate their own persona from their business. And that's when it becomes a little trickier. The people that I see that are wind up being very satisfied with that transition are generally the ones that can figure out how to ease out of that. And you ease out of it by planning, by having a good bench strength management team in place. And if it's not going to be a family transfer, that is a critical item to develop business value.
Okay.
In other words, if I have a business and that business is solely relies upon my expertise and my being there day after day after day, the value on a third-party sale is going to be significantly diminished, as opposed to if I have a tremendous management team in place and that business is going to hit on all 8 cylinders whether I'm there or not.
Right, right. Well, you can imagine that the buyer wouldn't want to invest in a business where, you know, that lead person who is really guiding the business will be gone. You don't know what you're going to get in that situation.
Exactly.
That makes sense.
I've been involved from the management side in a third-party sale twice in my career. In both times, the buyer insisted and actually put in place contracts for top management to stay for a certain period of time. And part of the value was that the organization did have good bench strength. And because most third-party buyers don't have a team that are going to fly in and take over the business.
And that takes time to get a good leadership team in place, I'm sure.
It is, and so bench strength, processes, all of those things that can be driven into the day-to-day operations of the business are a good thing. So that's why when we talk about runway, a 5-year runway, that's certainly a nice length of time to make sure that those things are really shored up, so that if the owner exits, they can get maximum value. It also is it's important because if that management is in place and processes are in place, the likelihood for that transition to go smoothly is a lot greater.
I want to ask you about the Dayton area, and I'll go back to some of the numbers I mentioned at the top of the show. According to the Small Business Administration, more than 50% of all small business owners in America are ages 50 or older. There are 28 million small businesses in America. That's a lot of business owners in this position, or will be in this position fairly soon. And from what we've seen from the Small Business Administration, they're expecting a lot of business turnover in the next 10 years. Can you compare that at all to the Dayton region? Do you know what our environment looks like?
I would say it pretty much mirrors that. Now, 20 years ago, a 200 employee company wouldn't have hit anybody's radar, maybe 30 years ago.
Right.
Today, that's a big business in Dayton, Ohio. And yes, it is very important. And I would say, and there are a number of people concerned. I've had discussions with various business people from the legal profession, the accounting profession, that are really concerned that business transition is not at the top of mind of so many business owners. Now, you can kind of go back to the recession that we had in 2007, 8, 9, 10, whatever, however length,
and beyond.
Wherever you want to define that. And I would say that all of a sudden, merger and acquisition activity came to a screeching halt, because business owners that were 60 years old at the time saw their business was in stress. They were also looking out and saying, oh golly, what's my retirement going to look like?
Right.
And so lots of business owners during that time period put off the whole idea of transition.
Right.
And they were really fighting fires in their own business, getting it shored up and really getting it back on track. So there's that pent-up demand of all those businesses that really would have normally gone through this process in 2007 through 2012 that are all of a sudden out there on the market. Additionally, there just are a lot of baby boomers that started businesses and now are transitioning. Our concern is that if business owners don't think about it and don't plan for this, they are going to go through a transition whether they want to or not, and it'll be under conditions that weren't to their design.
Right.
And when that happens, you worry about, first of all, is it going to force a sale that maybe is not in the best interest of the stakeholders of the company, the employees, the vendors, and all that. Companies will come in and say, hey, I'm going to buy this company, and I just really want the customer base, some of the processes and some of the intellectual property, and I'm going to move it to my company in Indianapolis. Okay, so if that's 25 employees, that's 25 jobs lost.
Right, right.
So we feel that it really is imperative that the Dayton business community as a whole to elevate this issue of business transition to a higher level, to get business owners to think about it.
Right.
The particular way a business owner chooses to go through succession, its facts and circumstances, depends upon what they want to do, whether they have family involved, whether they have a competent management team. It also is back to the owner. Is the owner looking at this transaction or transition as his retirement? That puts added pressure on that.
Right.
You know, the best case scenario of all is where the business owner has planned for his or her retirement outside of the business, okay? And that whatever comes out of the business is icing on the cake, or is money that, you know, who knows what they'll do with it. You know, maybe philanthropic needs, maybe just, you know, give to their children, whatever. But we really look that if an owner has properly prepared themselves financially for retirement, that's almost the foundation level for the first step that's required in a good transition.
Right. So the stakes aren't so high. They aren't
Exactly.
relying so much personally on the financial outcome.
Right. And then I would say the next step is back to your point about emotions.
Mm-hmm.
You know, where does the emotional bank stand? Mm-hmm. In other words, do you have a life outside of your business?
Right.
And I've seen lots of people that don't. And
well, a small business sucks you in. You
Yeah,
know,
it does.
It's easy to, you know, for it to eat up your entire life. You know.
Yep. Yes.
All of your free
absolutely.
time. So I guess with that 5 years, it might be a good idea to start slowly stepping back and removing yourself if you think it'll be a hard time, you'll have a hard time emotionally preparing.
Well, I would say start to think about your life in general.
Right.
What do you do? That's where sometimes the role of a business advisor, or whether it's an attorney, or whoever is your confidential business advisor, mm-hmm. even your advisory board, sometimes tends to be more psychology than it is really business facts.
Yeah, right.
So.
I want to go back to something you mentioned. You talked about awareness of business owners and just increasing the awareness of the need to plan ahead of time. Are you aware of efforts going on and maybe who might be leading them? Obviously, the Chamber, we're here, we're talking about it, we're trying to get the word out. But as far as some of Aileron's partners, is there anything going on in the Dayton area to try to increase awareness?
You know, it's hard to
informally.
Informally, I would say yes. First mm-hmm. of all, there are a number of good business advisors, a number of great attorneys, great accountants that are preaching this message regularly with business owners.
Right.
How effective or how many, if you want me to put a percentage on it, I'm
not
going to do it.
On it.
I couldn't do it, but I know that there is more awareness today than there was 10 years ago.
Right.
There's no doubt about it. I don't know if there is any quantifiable measure, but you just hear what's going on in the community, and there is more of it. But like I say, I do believe that it needs to be discussed, and our mission at Aileron is to really elevate the level of success of these private enterprises, mm-hmm. Not just for a financial event at the end of the road, but for success and peace of mind and happiness as those business owners and the people that work for private enterprises as they move down that road. And of course, the succession, the transition plan is just the final event. But there's some funny stories. I had the good fortune to work for probably the most honest, decent businessman I ever knew. And
who was that?
His name Phil Wagner, Wagner Smith Company.
Okay.
And we probably worked on the whole idea of succession and transition for a good 5 years. We had a pretty complex business, and it was personal to him because his grandfather had started the business. So it was 90 plus years old when the business sold. But the idea was when he bought the business from his siblings in the mid-'80s, it was a $7 million company. Mm-hmm. Fast forward to the late '90s, we were a $100 million company. Wow. It was a complex business. Mm-hmm. And so there were no family that really wanted to step in and get involved. And so as we looked at what we were going to do, we really had a roadmap laid out. But our eventual transition came out of the blue. It was
all that planning.
All the planning, but it actually did help us in the whole evaluation process when this big company approached us, and it was really interesting. We had done valuations and we knew what it was, and this is very interesting because I remember distinctly, like it was yesterday, that we had the meeting with this company that bought Wagner Smith, and we went back to the office, and I asked Phil, I said, Phil, are you emotionally prepared to sell the business that your grandfather started and that has your name on all the trucks? Mm-hmm. And his answer was, this is not about my grandfather, and it's not about me. Mm. It's about the 700 to 1,000 employees and their families that make a living. Right. What's the best way for this entity to move to the next level?
What a great way to look at it.
And that spoke volumes for him.
Yeah.
And it also was really important. Now, he had planned, he had done all those things that we talked about earlier that made it successful.
Yeah. That is a great story to end on.
Okay.
I want to thank you for your time. I think you gave us a lot of really good information, so I appreciate that. I want to mention a couple of things because we're talking about business leaders. The Dayton Area Chamber of Commerce actually has a program called Executive Dialogue. So if you're looking for some outside advice, maybe not a formal board, but we pair you with different business owners and business leaders, not competitors. You sign a non-disclosure form, but you're able to have a sounding board. So if you're interested in that program, you can contact the Dayton Area Chamber of Commerce. I want to thank you so much, Jack, for being with me
You're
today.
welcome.
If you want more information on this topic, DaytonChamber.org has information. You can also follow us on Facebook, LinkedIn, YouTube, Twitter. We're everywhere. So check it out. We have some exclusive content there. Thanks so much for being with us.
As great a challenge that starting a business or building a business can be, one of the most vital elements of business planning is how an entrepreneur can use his or her blood, sweat, and tears to create a business plan that includes succession planning when the founder decides it's time to turn the reins over to the next generation of leaders. Business owners, CEOs, or managers should know that in time the leadership needs to transition to new management, or in some cases new ownership, as a way to not only sustain the company and employee longevity and morale, but also how the ownership can fulfill the wealth objective it has through succession planning and change. Our chamber has long been an advocate of planning for all life stages of businesses, including the turnover of ownership and/or management. Without a succession plan in place, an owner or CEO really misses the opportunity to retain that business legacy and any value that has been developed by years of faithful service and hard work. Today's program helps highlight the benefits of such a well thought out and executed plan and makes a point that business ownership and succession can be a very important element in the life cycle of any viable business.